From the creepy swamps deep in the heart of Cajun country, I welcome you to Fave Five From Fans, the podcast where I, Jamie Ray, your humble host, invite a friend of mine to create a list of 5 of their favorite things that we have a shared interest in, be it movies, books, TV, toys, music, or whatever, our own unique Venn diagram of topics near and dear to our hearts. Then we sit down to compare and contrast, dissect and disseminate our choices for you, the listening audience. We'll start off with honorable mentions, those selections that didn't quite make the Fave Five, for good reasons or bad, and then we'll take turns unveiling our choices backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You'll hear us discussing anything from alien invasions to zombie attacks, Rom the Space Knight to musical numbers, Edgar Allan Poe to Stephen King, both literature and film adaptations. All that's left is for you to decide who's right, who's wrong, and will we still be friends after all this? I can't wait to get started. So please sit back, strap in, and get ready for this episode of Fave Five From Fans. Hello! Welcome to this extra special episode of Fave Five From Fans. For anybody new joining the podcast, very quickly, I'm going to bring a friend in, a friend who, in my opinion, is extremely versed in the subject that we both love. And we're going to discuss what our favorite 5 things of those are. I'd like to introduce our guest, Bryan Perrin, from multiple bands, but especially the dynamic duo. Welcome, Bryan.
How are y'all doing?
Hey, doing great, man. How's this Zoom working out?
It works pretty good. This is probably one of the most pleasurable things I'll do. I was hoping to do it sitting next to you, but of course, of the circumstances, we have to do it this way.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't put it off any longer. I wanted to have you on the show. For everyone out there, Bryan is actually the fingers and the brain behind the Fave Five From Fans theme song. Bryan was and I sat down for, I don't know, God, it's been since like 4 or 5 months now. And Bryan whipped it out in no time.
that was a great afternoon. It's always nice to be creative like that.
Yeah, I wish I knew what you were talking about, but it was nice watching someone be very creative. But still to this day, I'm so impressed with what you did. And I'm so thankful for you. And I'm so thankful to have you on the show today, finally, so we can talk about our favorite sci-fi and horror soundtrack scores. Now, what that means is it's not going to be the songs with lyrics in them. We are talking about the true scores, those songs that help us lift up to the highest heights and bring us down to the lowest lows, make us laugh and make us cry. So let me ask you, Bryan, what makes you the person that I want on this show?
Well, for starters, I've been playing music for a very, very long time. I'm a geek, as most geeks are. Yes. I like every part of a movie or a TV show, but studying music, I studied music in college. I play music. I've been playing music for the past 35 years. But I feel that as a musician, and most musicians can probably tell you this, when we go to a movie, we watch a movie differently than most people. Because we actually pay attention to the music and what's going on, and we hear music differently than most people do. And I know it drives my wife crazy sometimes, but we just do. We listen to music differently. I'm by means no expert in music, but people who compose the soundtracks for the soundtracks of our lives, most of the time, this is stuff we grew up on. But if you go back and you hear these themes outside of the movie, they move you just as much as they would have moved you when you were in the movie.
Yeah, you're so right, man. So right. The music, when done right, just makes a movie so much better. And when done wrong, it could really mess you up too.
It really can. But yeah, I'm hoping not to have any of those wrong ones in my list.
I've actually thought about you right before the coronavirus shutdown hit. I went and saw King Kong in the theaters. And Ben Mankiewicz at the beginning of it talked about the fact that this was really one of the first movies where the score was made after the movie had been filmed, so that the music helped move the story along where before then they basically just picked music or they had music written early. And so it was amazing to think that no one thought about that until 1932, I think it was. And it makes me realize how important people like you are that could take that and translate it to us on a different level, almost that we don't even notice.
Yes. And a lot of people don't. It's a good point. No, most people don't notice the music. They notice the emotion. But I dare somebody to go watch a movie without the music in it.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Right.
watch it dry. And it would change your world. The same way that when I went back and I was trying to make my list, I literally sat down and listened to the music outside of the movie. And it was just as impressive and just as moving as it was on the screen.
Oh, I feel you. There's one on my list here that I was surprised that it was on there, because until I sat down and really listened to it, I forgot about the emotions that it actually evoked. And
Absolutely.
Oh man, there's so much good music out there. I did hear an interesting story. Jennifer. She and I did a shark show not too long ago, and she told the story where I knew the whole John Williams doing the dun 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 dun, but I didn't know that beforehand they didn't actually want music. They wanted it to be silent and just hear the water. And it's amazing to sit back and think what that movie would have been like without the music.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So great stuff.
The lead up, the anticipation, and the lead up to what's coming. And that's what music does for movies.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Totally agree. So that's a pretty good rundown. So you are actually in three different things that I can think of right away. Of course, the dynamic duo being my favorite. Tell us a little bit about what you do lately in music. So let's say pre-Corona music.
Let's go back. I can give you a rundown fairly quickly.
Let's go.
I've played with a lot of people since, the late 80s, early 90s, but I'll give you the highlights. I played with Ryder Romero. I went from Ryder Romero to Kip Saunier and Hurricane at the Yellow Rose. I went from Kip Saunier to Wayne Toops.
Oh, yeah.
I went from Wayne Toops to Damon Troy. I went from Damon Troy to Hunter Hayes. Mm-hmm. And in between that time, there's so few piano players in Lafayette. Kids are not growing up and saying, to their mom and dads, I want to play piano. And it's not necessarily a lost art, but there's really not many of us coming up to fill these holes in these gigs. So I got to play with Richard LaBeouf. I get to play with Greg Martinez. I get to play with pretty much everybody in this area I have played with at some point or another. Right now, I'm playing with a band called Fifth Avenue, which was very popular in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also playing with a band called Jet 7, which is a private party Mardi Gras band you don't see too often because it's mostly private parties at Mardi Gras. And, of course, we have the duo, and the duo plays on the patios of restaurants all over Lafayette, and we have fun doing that. We get to do the things that we want to do outside of the bands, where the bands are structured. So I've been around. I love music. I love this area's music. So I've written a lot of songs for people, and I've played on a lot of records. Me and my wife, it's funny because we'll sit down on Sunday and listen to Jude Walker's show, and it'd be like, well, I played on that. wait, I played on that. Or cable, you turn on cable, I'm like, I played on that. So it's fun. It's an honor. It's an honor when people ask, and I'm still doing it. I play on Kylie Fry's records, Dustin Saunier's records. I played. When they ask, I have a keyboard. I'll travel. I'll play.
Yeah. And man, I've heard you in three of those different appearances, should I say. And every time it blows me away. I remember seeing Jet 7 there at a Mardi Gras ball, and it was like I do a superstar.
I still haven't. You still haven't been to a gig where I played Promised Land. I promise I'll do that one day. Just one time, Promised Land.
Well, I have to tell you, we've got back when Corona is finally over. Every other Tuesday there is a Elvis impersonator that goes to El Paso, and he sings it for me.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, great. Well, the Dynamic Duo, you guys have a Facebook page, right?
We do. It's a Dynamic Duo LA on Facebook. I also have my Facebook, which is Bryan Perrin.
That's two R's?
Yeah, that's 2R.
Well, great. Well, I think if we've got all of the handshaking and rump kissing out of the way,
Absolutely.
I'm ready for you to shoot me your honorable mentions. I believe you have a couple, right?
I do have a couple. It's kind of hard to make a list of movie soundtracks without all 4,000 of them being John Williams.
Yes, sir. I ran into that same problem.
Unfortunately, there's some John Williams in my selection, so there's no way to get around it. He is the master.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just start with my first two, of course. One of my honorable mentions. It's a great theme. Every time you hear it, you know exactly where it's from, and it's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, it's such a good one.
There is no way around, and Harrison Ford is with the fedora and the whip, and you know what it is when it starts.
Right.
Of course, my second honorable mention, and not only because it was such an incredible movie, but there's a reason why I picked this as an honorable mention, and any one of these could be in my top 5. But my second honorable mention is E.T.
Oh, yeah. That was a great one. I forgot about that.
And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And besides the music and it's being such an emotional movie, but if you remember, when E.T. is dressed as a ghost, and they're walking down the street.
I know where you're going.
He runs into a kid. If he runs to a kid dressed like Yoda, if you listen real hard in the background, they are playing Yoda's theme.
Yes.
And John Williams works Yoda's theme into the movie, which was cool.
That is awesome.
George Lucas reciprocated by putting 3 ETs in
the Galactic Senate. Yep.
Yeah, in the Galactic Senate.
You're right, man. That is a great pull.
That is why E.T. had to be some part of it.
Phone
and
home.
If you notice, he was saying home, home, home when he saw Yoda, so it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a great one.
But Yoda's theme is in the background.
That's cool. I'll have to listen to that next time I see it. We have an older DVD where the FBI agents are still have guns in their hands, not flashlights. They redid that for the remastered version. Oh, Lord. Well, those are two great ones. So Raiders, would you say that one is the best out of those? Well, let's not even talk about Crystal Skull. Out of those 3, because, man, I really enjoyed the music for The Last Crusade as well.
Yeah, when I say Raiders of the Lost Ark, it could encompass all 3 because that theme, that original theme that John Williams wrote, he was a master, and you'll probably hear it later. He's a master of using his themes throughout the entire movie, which is something that he did better than anyone else.
Yeah. You know which one sticks out in my mind is when they're doing the cross-traveling, or as they call it, traveling by arrow over the map. And the music that's playing at that time, man, it really makes you feel like you're in a plane with Indy. No, those are some great ones, man. Some great ones. So my 2 honorable mentions, the first one you're going to hear again, but it's going to be Escape from New York from 1981 by John Carpenter. And I know that a lot of people like John Carpenter, but don't believe he is a master composer, because I do know that he uses a lot of synth and that there's some repeats through it. But for me,
but it was the early 80s and synths were everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And what he does with that, it just evokes this feeling of it's tough, and he's going into New York and he's going to save the president, and he's literally all on his own. And I just really enjoy that one. I've got it on a vinyl, and I can just stick it on and just let it go. And yes, there are some repeating themes throughout the score, but to me that helps it tie all the things back together. So anyway, that's one. The other is a little known from Nightbreed, from Clive Barker's story that they turned into a movie in 1990. It's written and composed by Danny Elfman and is produced by Shirley Walker. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one or not.
I'm not familiar with the score or the soundtrack, but Danny Elfman is one of the greatest composers.
He is. And I have this on a cassette, and I also recently bought, I think it was Waxworks' release of it on new pressed vinyl. And it's an amazing song for the Nightbreed title score itself. But then when you go through some of the other music and you listen to what he does on the different parts of the score, it just really jumps out to me. And I was a huge Clive Barker fan at the time anyway. But even so, that's always stuck with me. And one of the coolest things that I think about the whole soundtrack is that if you listen to it near the end, there's a song that's called Country Skin.
This is someone else's story, someone that I never knew. This is someone else's body. Am I getting through to you? If you peel away the armor, is something underneath. If you look below for hidden treasures underneath another layer, are you hiding underneath the skin?
But it's a rendition of Oingo Boingo's song called Skin. And so you finish listening to this 45, 50 minutes worth of instrumental music, and then this starts, and it's like,
exactly.
What the hell are you doing, man? But I remember the first time I heard it, I wondered, because it was on a cassette, and I was wondering what happened there,
No, he took a left turn on Pinhook, is what he did.
That's what he did.
He took a left turn on Pinhook.
Well, that's great. So those are my two honorable mentions. I'm ready. If you are, let's strike up the band. Give me your number 5 pick.
Okay. You don't have a timpani roll? You should have a timpani roll in all of this.
A what?
A timpani roll.
What is that?
You know how they do on a timpani?
Oh, no.
For everyone?
I didn't know that's what that was called. The drum roll, please.
I know.
I got you. See, you're so musical.
Okay. I know. Okay. This was kind of hard, and it's probably one of the most recent things anybody has ever heard. It was really hard to not have this one higher, because if you really sit down and listen to the music, it is absolutely incredible. I mean, when you have so many soundtracks over the years that are heavy hitters, it's kind of hard to place them higher. But I'll tell you right now, my number 5. Avengers Endgame.
Get out!
By far, if you sit down, it was done by Alan Silvestri. And of course, I mean, when you talk about Alan Silvestri, what do you say? He's done so many films. Just recently, if you go back just in the 2000s, Castaway, Lilo and Stitch, Stuart Little, Made in Manhattan, Stitch the Move, Van Helsing, The Polar Express, Night at the Museum, G.I. Joe, and of course the Avengers. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of the Avengers, but what he did in Endgame is he took, throughout the entire movie, there was a little bit, every single theme from all the previous Marvel movies, and he integrated them in that movie.
Really?
At, the right times. And a lot of composers can bring you really, really high and really, really low. But when they come low, they don't bring it down to literally nothing. And he had a way of doing that in Endgame. When you get towards Tony Stark's funeral at the end and the outro from there, he comes down to just a single guitar, or he'll come down to just a piano. And then the theme throughout the entire, just the music throughout the entire thing. If you get a chance, sit down and listen to it without the movie. And
okay.
You'll be rewarded by doing it. because he really knew how to bring out emotion, especially in an emotional movie as it was.
Yeah, exactly. Especially there at the end. I couldn't hum it to you, but I remember that music at the memorial just being wow. I mean, it really.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't talk about him without talking about Back to the Future. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and for me,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I can't think of Alan Silvestri without thinking of course, his best compositions ever, the Doberman Gang and Chips.
Yes. But he also, he did Forrest Gump. He just done so many great things, and can you imagine? That's number 5.
I know. I can't wait. So my number 5, I feel deja vu because it's going to be a little ditty from 1989, also by Danny Elfman, produced by John Peters, and I'm talking about the first Batman.
Yes, I knew you were going there.
Oh, so for our listeners, Bryan is actually sitting in his own personal bat cave.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you see the bat cave sign back there?
I can. And Bryan has got some really cool Batman paraphernalia in there, so I knew he would like this one.
And I hate to tell you, Jim, Batman is not in my list. So.
Wow, really?
It's not.
I'm glad I could represent for you, brother.
Absolutely, because it was really wicked what he did with Batman.
Yeah.
And
then Returns too. I mean,
yes.
You go from one to the next, and it really feels like it's a sequel, like it's part of that original album, but changed up for the new villains. And I mean, it was a great one. Danny Elfman is so talented. I mean, you talk about all of the stuff that he did and is still doing. It's incredible. That's going to be my number 5, Batman, original motion picture score. Love it. I love it. This is going to be some good lists.
Yes.
So, all right. Why don't you go ahead? What would be your numero 4?
My number 4 is an absolute complete sellout.
Okay.
I'm going to let y'all know that from the go. Okay. My number 4 is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay. Now, I'm interested in the follow-up. How is that a sellout?
Okay. The follow-up is Kubrick actually hired, I think it was Alex North, to do the scoring for the movie. But he had music in mind that he wanted to kind of follow what he wanted for the movie. What ended up happening is he scrapped the score and just actually used the actual songs that he had in his head. So the beginning, the Sprach Zarathustra, I don't know how you say it, by Richard Strauss. These are, he used Johann Strauss's Blue Danube. He used classical music. And what people thought were actually the score for the movie were just re-recordings of old classics that were written.
Oh, really? I'd never heard that.
That's why I kind of call it a sellout, because, he didn't really have somebody write an actual score. They just re-recorded, stuff that was out there already.
How amazing, because that one song, there are very few people who would hear that and not instantly think of 2001. Even if they haven't seen the movie. Absolutely. That's what they're going to think of.
Absolutely. Elvis used it.
Yeah, exactly. It's good enough for the king. It should be good enough for us.
That's right. It should be. I should have probably listened to how to pronounce it before, but I didn't. It's okay.
Your pronunciation was perfect.
Yes.
It was spot on. I did read that Jerry Goldsmith had actually conducted the National Philharmonic Orchestra to do Alex North's score back in the 90s.
They did.
Yeah, I'd be interested to go back and hear that. Man, you're just expanding my mind.
Well, back to calling it a sellout. When it comes to music, there's only 12 notes you can use when it comes to music. There's only 12 notes in any scale that is ever played. And to think that all this music comes from 12 notes.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It is amazing.
Oh, yeah, you're so right. Well, talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, set out in space, in the far, far reaches of space. makes me think of my number 4, which comes from the pen and baton of Alexander Courage. So that's right. I'm talking about Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. Two themes that, again, are instantly recognizable to most anyone. I both of those scores, I mean, they have been my ringtones. They have been text tones. They're such a part. As a matter of fact, when Tina and I were first married, we would watch Next Gen when it would come on TV, and we would sing the song for, no words, but da 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 da.
And it's amazing how it's carried, and it's carried through all the series, and it's carried through the movies, and I'll surprise you later.
Yeah. Okay. I do like how on certain other films, and I know this from listening to another podcast that, God help me, I can't remember right now, but it was one of Phantom Dark Dave had a guest on, and they did top 5 Star Trek. And it's amazing how they take those same notes and put them into another score and use them a different way. And you almost don't even notice it. It's subliminal to you.
Yes.
But those 2 original ones, those are always going to stick with me, Okay, well, with phasers set to stun, why don't you give me your number 3 choice?
Number 3, and I can't believe that this is number 3. It is the most famous 2 notes ever played in the history of orchestra. And absolutely, my number 3 is Jaws.
That's such a great pick.
It's an F and an E, and I think it's an F and an E. I should have double-checked that before we started, but I think it's an F and an E, and it is the most positively the best use of 2 notes ever in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And John Williams, he was a master, like I said earlier, of reoccurring themes, but he was a master of French horns. And the French horns in this movie are just as important as those 2 notes. And it's just, he knew how to bring you to what was coming. And,
right.
He's the master, and it's kind of hard to, say anything more about. You can't even begin to go through what he scored and what he's done and how he's done, but it's just amazing.
Right. Oh, I agree. And of course, you can't talk about this song and this soundtrack, without telling the story. And by the way, I think it's E and F.
Yes, E and F.
E and F. With the story that they didn't want to use music. They bring John Williams in, and he's sitting down, and he plays this music over that. And looks at him and goes, okay, that's great, but really, what's the song you're going to use?
Yeah.
He's like, no, that's really the song. You let me put it in front of you, And
how do you watch those scenes? How can you imagine those scenes without it?
God, I said George Lucas. I'm sorry. I meant Spielberg.
Yeah.
I meant Spielberg. Yeah, you couldn't. At that time, he wanted to just have the water sounds.
And those 2 notes and just the water. And you knew what was coming.
Yeah.
Or, I guess back then they didn't know what was coming, but they read the marquee going into the movie, so I guess they kind of knew what should have been coming.
And the great thing, and T-Jen and I talked about this at length, that movie has had so much going wrong for it to be the classic that it is. And, they wanted to use the shark so much earlier in the film. And when it broke down and they had issues with it, I think this music really made it a better film,
yes.
And, you're right. 2 notes, 2 notes.
2 notes.
Wow. Well, I'm going to see your number 3, John Williams, and I'm going to call with my number 3, John Williams, and I'm talking about Star Wars from 1977. Absolutely. And that's right. I'm not calling it Episode 4. I'm not calling it A New Hope. Damn it. It's Star Wars.
It's Star Wars. If I could reach my lightsaber right near, I'd turn it on for you.
That music, and there's so many different scores on that soundtrack. Of course, you've got the Star Wars theme, then you've got the Imperial March, the one that everybody calls Vader's theme. You've got the music that was playing in the bar, in the cantina. And there's so many different things for a guy to come up with literally music from another world.
Yes.
And it's been so endearing, and it's stuck with us for so long. Same thing, used in different movies. They take parts of it, and use it again. And then he did so much.
He did.
Yeah. He's truly the master. He's truly a master. So let's see. I know it's getting tougher and tougher. I'm really interested. What's your number 2?
My number 2, and I'm going to shock you a little, and I'm going to be specific, and I'm going to be specific for a reason.
Okay.
My number 2 is Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
Search for Spock.
Ooh, that is specific.
And it was, scored by James Horner, and James Horner, took some criticism for, reusing some of his melodies, from other parts. But I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to, he did Wrath of Khan, and he also did Search for Spock. But in Search for Spock, it really became the music was a little darker than Wrath of Khan. It was, and I hate to say this, and most people won't understand this, but it became, to me, more Vulcan than any other thing. And of course, it was Spock-centric the whole entire movie.
Right.
But if you listen from the time that they get Spock back to Vulcan to the end of the movie, it was the best use of both Star Trek themes at the same time. And when I heard it the first time, I completely flipped out. And I don't know if many people caught it, but right after Ship Out of Danger, and Kirk says, saved the trip, all that music right there from the time that they were the reunification to that point, and then right after that, when they shut down all the dialogue, from there, both Star Trek themes are in there, the original TV theme and the motion picture themes. And there's a great melding of both of them.
I did not know that.
You should really catch, if you look from the time they got back to Vulcan and just listen to the music, and you could probably find it, you can find it on YouTube, but you would have to scroll to, towards the end. But that music from that whole time of the reunification to the end of the movie is absolutely unbelievable.
Wow.
I mean, he was good at using themes in and out, but for me, just the music, if you listen to the music by itself, I knew what was happening in the movie, even though I wasn't watching the movie.
Wow, really?
It was just, for me, that melding of those two themes at the end is just absolutely incredible.
Kind of like a mind meld of music.
It was, right at the end, when they were mind melding Spock out of McCoy.
Wow. I tell you, I actually really like Star Trek 3. I know it does get a lot of bad rap. It is, of course, the first time we see an Excelsior. And when we see, the Yorktown in the next one, it has some of that same feeling to it. But, man, I don't know what part the score is when you're first seeing the Excelsior, but it just swells up in you. You talk about James Horner in general. He did Field of Dreams. He did Glory. He did Apollo 13. He did Braveheart. He did Titanic. It was just... And Aliens. Yeah, Aliens almost made my list. That's one of the few cassettes that I still have of a score. And sadly, we lost him several years ago, about 5 years ago, early at the age of 61. I actually got to meet him at a convention back in the early 90s. And very nice guy. And it was a big thrill for me. I have a card signed by him.
But if you're a Star Trek fan, go and listen to that last 15, 20 minutes of just the music. And when you hear it, it will, as a Star Trek geek as we are.
Yes. I know it well, man. Wow, that's another great pull. Man, so I'm really excited to hear what your number 1 is. But first, I'm going to give you my number 2. And it is one of the songs that I think millions and millions of young boys and girls have thrown a towel around their neck and ran around the house humming. And I'm talking about Jerry Goldsmith's Superman theme.
Yes.
You know, that whole album is just so heroic. I mean, no other way to say it, you know. It just, you hear the different songs, and you just, oh man, there's one song for when he first is flying, and there's another song with the helicopter going on, another song with the destruction of Krypton, and each and every one of them has a different soul to it. Yes. And the things that he did to that song, I just loved it, you know. And I'm sure you know the soundtrack that I'm talking about, how it is.
Absolutely, I do. It was very hard for Superman not to make my list, because, you know, I didn't want to put too much John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah, it's tough, huh?
You know? But yes, Superman was one of my Can You Read My Mind?
Yes.
There's so many great songs that came out of those movies, those early movies.
Uh-huh. Did you know, I remember reading that Can You Read My Mind was originally supposed to be sung by Margot Kidder in the movie, and they changed it to be a voiceover. And then later on, Maureen McGovern released it as a single in '79.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I remember reading that, and I was like, I knew Margot Kidder could sing. Yeah, you know. And so John Williams, he conducted the London Symphony Orchestra on this one. And for a long time, you didn't get the whole soundtrack. But back in early 2000 and maybe 2001, Rhino released what they called the complete album. And it was 2 discs of it, and it's phenomenal. I actually got it from the library at one point, and I really, really enjoyed it. So that's my number 2. So if all my ciphering and figuring is done, that means we're at your number 1, your uno, your top of the heap. Give it to me, man. Tell me what you got.
Absolutely. And I hate to be specific again, but, you know, as far as music that moved you to, in a movie that moved you to certain things and in certain areas, and how much anymore. And like I said, I hate to be specific. But it's John Williams, and it's The Empire Strikes Back.
Another great pull.
There is absolutely I don't believe, you said the Imperial March earlier. I don't believe the Imperial March wasn't introduced until Empire.
Look at you.
I think it was Empire. You got the Imperial March, which was Darth Vader's scene. And you also got Yoda's theme.
Right.
Which was the first time. And that Yoda's theme has been in almost every single movie since. There's a hint of it everywhere.
Right.
Even in the last movie, there's a hint of Yoda's theme. There's always going to be the Imperial March. But even just Lando's palace, the duel between, which I think, the best lightsaber duel is probably Obi-Wan and Anakin, in Episode 3. But the other one is, Anakin and Luke in Empire Strikes Back, and the music during that, the music after that, and then the music when you see the Rebel fleet at the end, leading out to the Star Wars theme. He knew how to take you to a place where, you knew what was coming, you knew what you knew what to feel.
Yeah,
it wasn't just because of the scene or the scene or the emotions of it. It was because the music led you there. That's what was so good about John Williams. He's a master, and if you listen to all of his movies, these themes are everywhere. They're woven in and out of almost every scene. There's a hint of a theme here, a hint of Yoda's theme, a hint, it's just, he was the master at it. And by far, Empire Strikes Back is musically my number 1.
Yeah. I think you're definitely right that the Imperial March didn't come until Empire, but holy crap, there's a lot of good music that came from that guy.
Absolutely.
And God, he puts out so much stuff, and still putting it out.
Still putting it out.
Yeah. They recently put out an album with Steven Spielberg, I believe, where they kind of went back and re-recorded a lot of their themes, and that's where one of the CDs I got again from the library that really reinvigorated.
You hate to call him the master, but what did make the list? Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Mm-hmm.
Home Alone. He did Jurassic Park. He did Hook. He did the Harry Potter films.
Yeah, I mean, hell, the guy's been nominated for 52 Oscars.
Yes.
I mean, he wrote the theme to the Olympics. You don't just get some guy off the street to do that.
No, he by far is a master, and he deserved to be number one, but he deserved to be number one for a reason. And out of all of the things that he did, being a Star Wars fan in general,
mm-hmm.
but just the way he led you into those scenes were just phenomenal. You can't watch Star Wars, any of the episodes, without the music. It's just not the same.
Yeah, you're right. And I had read that not only is the Imperial March so prominent, like you talked, it's used in Solo, it's used in all 9 movies. It's used at the very beginning of Rogue One. I mean, just holy crap.
Yoda's theme. Go back and listen to Yoda's theme by itself, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I hear that everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere they bring it down, or everywhere where the Force is highlighted, it's usually Yoda's theme somewhere in the background, which was genius.
Yeah, man, that is great. The number 1 from John Williams. Whew. Some good music. I'm a little worried about throwing my number 1 down, but then again, it is my favorite, so I know it's going to be just as good. I'm talking about the music for The Night Michael Came Home, 1978's Halloween by John Carpenter. It is just my favorite song, my favorite music.
Ominous.
It is ominous is a great word for it. It's the same way where he uses that little bit of music, more than 2 notes, but a little bit of that same music to do so many different things with. And it's such a great movie. It is, sir?
When you go sci-fi and horror, it probably has the best music. When you think of romantic comedies, they have great music in it, but they'll recycle old 70s R&B love songs or them. But when you talk about scores, you go sci-fi and you go horror. Some of the best music has been in horror movies by far.
Oh, I agree with you. And Carpenter is, some people will say, and I wouldn't agree, but I wouldn't disagree with it. Some of his movies aren't as strong as others are. But when you talk about the music that man puts out, he is without. Never mind. I don't know. How to say. He's awesome. I love this. I went out and got this one when it came out with like a 2-disc set for, I don't know if it was the 40th anniversary. And there's a bunch more other songs that had never been released before. And even though it's the same thing, it's thematic throughout the whole theme. That's because Michael doesn't speak.
There's absolutely no way you can watch a horror film without music. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
And the suspense and the emotion is in the music. And I guess that's the musician in me, saying that, but you just can't. You can't, because the music brings you to the emotion.
Oh, you're so right. And you go back to one of his earliest films, Assault on Precinct 13, and from 76. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's this incredible heartbeat through the movie. And it's about this gang that it's based on Rio Bravo. So it's basically an urban Rio Bravo movie. And a police station is shut down, and there's only a few people left, and this gang ends up circling it and basically wants to get someone who's in there out. And oh my God, it's you look at that from 76, and if you didn't say, man, whoever made this music is awesome, and then to know that, wow, that's the same guy who directed it too,
Yes.
Same guy who wrote it.
And
he's just a master.
When you look at these award shows and the Academy Award shows, when you see these sound editing guys and the mixers and the masterers, and that is an art form that's just unbelievable what they have to do to get this stuff on film.
Yeah.
how much they have to produce, how much they have to mix down, where to put it. And they're mixing in environments that even as a musician for 35 years, I can't imagine what they do. And they're so detail-oriented, and playing this music, recording it, and putting it on the film. You can't have movies without music.
Oh, and you've got to not only have a love for it, but you do have to have a mastery for it.
Absolutely.
Me, I can't play the overturned 5-gallon bucket, but so I can't imagine, how much harder it must be for someone like yourself who actually has the skill.
But you can play it. You can play it. I don't know if you can play it well, but you can play it.
Best thing I could ever play was a boombox.
There you go.
Well, this has been great, man. You had some awesome pulls. I can't believe that we didn't have anything cross over.
I thought we would.
Me too.
I know you're a little more horror than I am.
Yeah, and you're a little more rock and roll.
I'm a little more rock.
Is that it?
We could parody that song if you want to.
Yes, we could.
I'll be Donnie if you'll be Marie.
Oh, I just want to feel pretty.
I know.
Man, I have to tell you, the one that most, I don't want to say shocks, but the one that most surprised me was your number 5, The Avengers Endgame. I am definitely going to have to pay a lot more attention when we do the next rewatch on that movie.
Yeah, and take the time and pull it up on YouTube and just listen to the soundtrack. Listen to the score. Even listen to the last 15 minutes or the last 25 through the battle, when he dies, through the memorial service towards the end. You will go from the highest highs musically to the lowest lows, and he takes you exactly where you need to be in that scene, and that's what makes them masters.
You're right there. Well, I'm going to do that. So thank you so much for being here. I had a wonderful time. I wish we were sitting across from each other with a couple of cold ones, but we got to do what we got to do, keep everyone safe.
That's right.
So thank you for joining me here. And I want to thank you out there in the podcast universe for joining Bryan and myself. I want to make sure that you're following us. You can find us, of course, at AOC Community Media. Just go on there and find the listening page, and you'll see Fave Five there. You can also catch us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, on Spotify, on Stitcher. You can also interact with us on Twitter at Fave From Fans. On Facebook, we have a page that's Fave Five From Fans, all spelled out. And we're also on Instagram. And we here at Fave Five are excited to be a part of the Slightly Irregular Podcast Network. You can find us on Instagram at instagram.com/SIP Network. That's Slightly Irregular Podcast. And join my fellow podcasters with the Terrible Terror Podcast, the Podcast from Another World, Dead Hand Radio, Paranormal Pactivity, the Angry Dad Podcast, Back in Time Podcast, From the Waste, and us, Fave Five From Fans. Bryan, thank you. I appreciate you being here, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
It was my honor, sir. This is Hulk Boy from Hollywood signing off.
This is someone else's story, someone that I never knew. This is someone else's body. Am I getting through to you? If you peel away the armor, is something underneath. If you look below for hidden treasures underneath another layer, are you hiding underneath the skin? If you peel away the skin, is there anybody there? If you peel away the armor, is Is it too late to begin? Is there anybody hiding? If you peel away the skin, now the spark has passed between us now, a momentary recognition, something lost and something gained, and something shared that feels strange, something cold that will not go away. There's a heart as cold as ice in a vault that's made of stone. Over years the walls got higher. Over years the walls have grown. This is someone else's story, someone that I never knew. This is someone else's body. Am I getting through to you? If you peel away the skin, if you peel away the skin,